welcome back to Inside the Minds of Authors. This is the podcast that is dedicated to bringing you amazing authors with passionate books that are going to keep you turning pages. I am so excited you guys are here. I'm DC Gomez, your host. I'm also an author, so it is always thrilling to share amazing stories for incredible authors with new readers. So hopefully you're here, you're connecting, and we're going to have a great time. If you're new to the show, whether you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, make sure to subscribe, make sure to follow. You don't want to miss a single episode. Today we're going to be doing 3 authors, so an author on the hour, so make sure you stay tuned live. If you're watching the replays, put some comments in there. I want to see what you guys are thinking. I'll be going back to them, so it's going to be fabulous. And because you guys are here to see who is our feature author, let me bring the amazing Miss Alison. Hello, madam. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on.
It is a pleasure to have you. I am excited. You're an author, you're a ghostwriter, you have all these things. So we have questions. But before we do, you're going to be sharing a piece from your book. So I'm going to turn it over to you, madam. Take it away.
Awesome, thanks. So my book is The New Empire, and it is an alternate history that asks the question, what if the Chinese Empire came to the Americas centuries before the Europeans? So by the time the book takes place in the 1700s, um, the indigenous peoples have formed a continental alliance that's become a world superpower. So basically, it has completely changed history. The main character is Jiangxi, who is a slave to Onas, a tribal elder. And the excerpt I'm about to read is several years into Jiangxi's story. So in this scene, his master Onas is telling a traditional Haudenosaunee story to his neighbors, a traditional folk tale, while Jiangxi listens in. So it's a bit of a story within a story. Once, long ago, there was a girl who was never satisfied with anything she was given. She wanted the best of everything. Her parents saw how she was when young men came to court her, and their hearts were sore with the fear she would never marry. She would mock her suitors and criticize them. This one she would call too fat, that one too thin. This one she would call slow of speech, that one talked too much. This one had too long of a face, and that one had sharp eyes. She was never satisfied with the men, and so she did not take a husband. One night when the moon was absent from the sky, a strange man came to their fire. He was beautiful in the flickering light from the lowering flames, his eyes wide and hair long and black as midnight. I am here to take your daughter as my wife, he told the girl's parents. The girl and her father rejoiced at the man's richly beaded clothes and handsome jewelry and pretty face, but her mother worried and said to her daughter, "None of the men of our tribe were good enough for you. Why would you marry a man you don't know?" "Mother," said the girl without listening, "I have found the man I will marry." And she took all her things, the best the village could offer, and packed them up to take with her. They left the village that night, the girl walking behind her new husband into the darkness. And so, Onas continued in his mellifluous storyteller's voice, the girl followed her husband into the dark. But she realized as she walked that her mother's voice was in her head, her mother's voice that said her husband was someone who she didn't know. Her steps lagged and she started to fall behind. Noticing this, the man turned to her and pulled her close. "Wife of mine," he told her, "worry not, for my home and people are waiting for us. Soon we will be amongst them." In the distance, she heard the rushing of the river and thought that her husband's people must be fishermen. And so her heart was relieved, at least until they reached the edge of the river and the lodge house there. For over the door was a pair of long horns, the strangest sight she had ever seen. Seeing her fear, her husband said, "It is late. We will sleep, and in the morning I will show you to my people." That night the girl could not sleep because she was so afraid. She thought about all she had left behind her, the good people of her village, the warm and caring lodge of her family. Her husband's house smelled like the river, a rancid odor like dead fish. The next morning the girl greeted the day with tired eyes. And the day also seemed tired, for the skies were gray and the land covered in fog. Her husband greeted her, and his beauty failed to raise her heart today, unlike the night before when she had first seen him. In the light of day it seemed as if his eyes were cold and reflected nothing. Her mother's words echoed in her head after her husband left the lodge for the day. She had chosen material goods and beauty over the good advice of her family. If she had only been content with the simple things of her village, she would not be stuck here alone and afraid. At that moment there was a sound at the door. Thinking her husband had returned to her, she rushed to greet him. Instead of the beautiful man she had married, there was a horned snake waiting on the threshold. Outside, there were many more serpents, and she realized that her husband had lied to her. He had disguised himself as a man, but he was nothing more than a cold and ferocious snake. She knew that she needed to escape, but could think of no way to accomplish it while guarded by so many fierce serpents. She returned to the lodge and wept at her own foolishness. Finally, exhausted, she fell into a deep sleep. In her sleep, she dreamed. An old man came to her and looked her in the eyes, and she saw pity and love in his gaze. Granddaughter, he greeted her, you are not without courage, but this is a trap of your own making. In order to escape, you must do exactly as I say. Will you do it? Oh, yes, she cried. Then listen to me, he said. From out the door of the lodge is a tall mountain. You must run directly to this mountain and climb it without stopping or speaking, no matter what cries you hear in pursuit. If you hesitate, you will be lost. I will do it, she vowed in the dream, and then she woke up. She jumped to her feet and rushed out the door. Standing there was her beautiful husband, and he cried out to her, Wife, where are you going? She bit her tongue and said nothing in return, just ran past him. His cries followed her. As she ran, she went by an old woman who called to her, Help me, I am sick. Although the girl's heart broke at the cries, she heeded the old man's advice and did not stop. Last, she ran past a child trapped by a circle of snakes. Help, they will bite me, he cried. Although her heart was torn to shreds, she did not heed him and ran past with tears streaming from her eyes. She came to the mountain's edge and began to climb. She climbed and climbed as the sun set and rose and set again. Her hands were torn to shreds and her dress became tattered and she was pummeled by wind and rain. Finally, she reached the top of the mountain and had just enough strength remaining to pull herself up. Waiting for her was the old man of her dream. Looking back, she saw that the snakes had followed her and she was afraid. But the old man at her side pulled back his hand and threw something at the serpents, something that flashed and burned them as they followed. It was lightning. Now she knew the old man was Hino, which means thunderer. Hino threw lightning after lightning, and the sky played drums of thunder. The snakes tried to flee, but they were all caught and burned. When the last serpent lay dead, the old man turned to her and said gently, Thank you, my granddaughter. These creatures were a plague upon this earth, bringing much ruin to the true people. You have saved them. The girl was brought back to her village by Hino, who told the people of her bravery. There was much rejoicing, and when the first good man came to her and asked her to be his wife, she went with him and was happy for the rest of her days. As the years passed, she often said the same thing to her children, and then her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Happiness is found in the simple things. The fire popped as Onas subsided, and the spell of the story that held his visitors captive was released. The tribal men left, and Jianshi thought about the story. The girl in the story was spoiled, and Jianshi felt no sympathy with how she made her own unpleasant fate. In fact, he had wanted her harmed for her willfulness, for having the best of everything and being contented with none. It reminded him of the slaveholders, overflowing with abundance and giving the slaves nothing in return. Jiangshi's plan was simple. He would be the beautiful serpent in their midst. He would smile and nod and be agreeable, and he would lull them into following him into the dark. He would find a way to free the slaves, all of them, not just himself. He would find a way, some way, any way he could, to lead his people to freedom.
Ooh. But that was amazing. So, congratulations on the book. Great book reading. I was like, ooh. So I feel like your main character really didn't want her to have a happy ending, but now I feel bad. I was like, oh, am I too judgy? I might be too judgy. So, congratulations. Let's talk about this book. Where did this idea come from? Where did it all come together? Tell us.
Well, actually, I love to read historical articles. I'm a history buff. So I was reading an article about how the Chinese back in the 1400s might have come to the Americas way before Europeans. And I was like, you know what? Maybe that could have happened. This is my what if. And I thought, what if they had established permanent trading ties? How would that have changed things for the indigenous populations? And my story was born from that.
I love it. I like the story within a story. What made you decide to put that together? Because that's very different in terms of like teaching through parables inside a story already. What was the goal behind that for that? Tell us.
Well, a lot of indigenous populations, for example, the one of the main characters is Haudenosaunee and Amamutsun. He's between two different tribes. Um, a lot of the way that teachings are oral, so it makes sense for him to, because he is basically an elder of his tribe. So it makes sense for when he's trying to make a point or uh, teach a lesson that he would do so through stories, through the stories of his people.
So you have all these different elements going on. How much research did you do for your book? Because it has so much that it's pulling from, and you're bringing into this, alternative history kind of time frame. How much did you do for that?
I did a ton. You can't see it right here, but to my left is a huge bookcase, and it's filled with books, history books. And because my main character is Chinese, he's a Chinese slave to, again, this elder in the tribes. And so I had to research multiple cultures to make sure, and multiple languages to make sure I got everything right, because they speak different languages also in the book. So in the back of the book actually is a whole glossary of terms from all these different cultures.
That's pretty impressive. Like you have put all these together and you thought all these pieces to bring this book to life and to get people excited. What genre is the book? Where were you looking putting it in?
It's alternate history. So alternate history just takes sort of a pivotal turning point in time and then imagines going off in a completely different direction. And it can be something small that completely changes the world. The whole idea of, the butterfly flaps its wings and then it causes a hurricane on the other side of the planet. So same with history. Small event, but it changes everything.
I like where you picked it up in the like historical time and play with it because that's really different and unique with it. And you're trying to make a series. So is this a standalone book? What can we expect out of this?
It is a standalone book. I have been asked if I'm going to write a series because there are some characters in there that their stories haven't quite finished. But I like to wonder, like when I finish a book myself, when I finish reading a book, I like to wonder what happened to everyone. Like, because you might have, wrapped up for the main character, but I always like to picture what happens next. So I left a few threads unfinished. Someday maybe I'll tell their stories, maybe in a short story or something, but right now their story is finished.
How do you work on your process of creation? Like, are you a pantser? Do you write by the seats of your pants? Are you an outliner? How does that go in putting a book together when you're looking at it from like, this is the idea that's playing in my head? How does that work?
When I first started out writing, when I wrote my first book, I was definitely a pantser. I was like, oh, the inspiration has to come to me. The characters will go off on their own journey. And then I kept on writing myself into corners. So essentially, I was like, okay, I got to get organized about this. I have lots of stories to tell. So what I did is I started doing outlines. I started doing chapter by chapter outlines. And eventually, I also added on character sketches. So I'd really know my characters inside and out. And that was great for a project like this because I really needed to know the history. I needed to know the languages. So I had, in addition to the actual manuscript, which is about 90,000 words, I probably had that much in just background that was just for me as the writer.
I so appreciate you saying that because as a writer, I'm the same way. Like, I want to write by the seat of my pants and just let inspiration come to me. But my muse leaves at page 13. I don't know where she goes, but she doesn't come back. And then I'm like, well, that was fun. The end. So I'm glad that you decided we should outline. Was that process difficult, transitioning from, flowing with it and then actually start plotting? Like, how was that for you?
I mean, amazingly enough, like it was super easy because it's like having a roadmap. I don't know about you. I love to take road trips. So I love old-fashioned maps. I always have old-fashioned maps in my car. My kids laugh at me.
Me too.
Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, so I love having the roadmap basically for the book. It made it so much easier. I was like, wow, why didn't I do this like 2 books ago? Like, what was I thinking?
I wanted to follow that dream. I understand. It's like, hey, you're just supposed to sit there and just write. It doesn't work as well for all of us. It doesn't. So you're also a ghostwriter, which to me is amazing. And I'm like, oh, I want to ghostwrite. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I have the time. How do you switch from creating books about yourself and being a ghostwriter for others? What is that process like?
Well, it's sort of fun and it can be inspiring too because you're pretty much entering someone else's world and a different author's voice. So it's sort of like being one of the characters in your own story. You get to live somewhere else. And I love stories and I love ideas. I love working with other writers and publishers. So it was a lot of fun to do. Granted, you are within the confines. You can't have your character go off on a wild goose chase. They have to pretty much stick to the script. So that's another place where doing outlining and really having character sheets and knowing my characters inside out helped. But yeah, it can be a lot of fun. And I like doing it. I like writing my own stories, but I also like writing those stories too.
So I love how you described it because I think that's really perfect. It's playing in somebody else's world. And sometimes I
Yeah.
think people forget how much fun you can have just, playing pretend. Because I think that's what all of us as authors do is to create these things. So I appreciate it.
Well, people do it for fun. They write fan fiction, right? I
Mm-hmm.
just get paid for it.
That's such a great way to put it. That is so true. You're living the best of all worlds, so I love it. So tell me, dear, where do you get your inspiration from? Where does your ideas come to you?
Oh my goodness, everywhere. I read constantly. That is a number one I would give, advice for writers who are like, oh my goodness, I'm stumped. I don't know where I can get my next idea. Just read. Like I read tons and tons of nonfiction, news articles, science articles, history, new discovery. Like anything can spark an idea. Like even walking down the street, like if you see an interesting character, if you live in a big city, which I have, at one point I lived in New York City, which is one of the biggest cities. Um, yeah, basically walking down the street, you will find characters from all walks of life, and just be like, okay, I got to put that person in my story because they are unique, they're interesting. I want to know their story, so I'm going to write something down about them.
I say that to my friends. It's like, don't mind if I quote that because I love that frame. And they all look at me like, are you serious? Like, yes, that is going in a book somewhere. I don't know what book it is, but we will put that in there. So I love it. You say you read a lot. What is your favorite genre to read? Or do you have one?
I read in all genres because I write in all genres also. I think a good story is a good story, and the background is what makes it interesting and unique. But the story is really about the characters, about the people. So to me, it doesn't matter if it's set in a Western or if it's set in a romance or if it's, literary fiction where it really delves deep into the human psyche. Everything is amazing. You can find beautiful stories in any genre.
Do you have a favorite author or do you just kind of pick one up and go with it? Is that something that you're like, this is the author, I need to have all of their books? How does that work? I'm all curious about this. Like, let's discuss this.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely have favorite authors. Like
Okay.
every writer does. There are ones that inspired me from when I was young. For example, one of my favorite authors is Tanith Lee. She's a British fantasy and science fiction author who's no longer with us, but she was the first woman to win the August Derleth Award, which is the British Fantasy Awards, and she was way ahead of her time in the subject matter that she wrote, and just her writing style is beautiful. It's poetic, like it really grabs you. So I love her, and I would definitely recommend her. She's sort of like the writer that maybe not a lot of people know about, but she is definitely worth picking up one of her books.
Oh, that is awesome. There's so many talented writers that we fall in love with that they're non-mainstream names that you're going, why doesn't everybody know this person? Like, you just need this book in your life. So tell us, what are you
Exactly.
working on? What is your next project? Oh, can you tell us what's next for you?
I can actually. So last year I did a crazy, crazy project. It was called Author versus AI.
Okay.
So using no AI at all, I was against the AI. I wrote 34 books. So I was writing about a book a week. I didn't finish out. I originally planned to do a whole year, but I got sort of derailed at the end of the year just because I have kids. And it's around the holidays. I was like, okay, this is getting to be too much. So I did first drafts of those 34 books. So this year, what I've been doing is I've been editing those books and sending them out. And they're in all genres. So I don't know which one will hit the press first, but we'll see.
Okay, so we're going to back up a little because I'm going, I literally stopped and went, like, what did you say again? You wrote 34 books. So you were writing a book a week, pretty much.
Yes,
Okay.
first drafts.
First draft of a book, how many words? I mean, when did you sleep?
No, I did sleep. I'm a pretty fast writer. So I they were 40,000 words and above, which is the classic definition of for awards and things, what the minimum length is. So they were some of them were pretty short, which is one reason why this year I've been doing a lot of editing, rewriting, adding to make those books publishable length. So more novellas than novels.
You were busy. So what made you decide to do that? This is an entire thing that I'm like, I need to know because that's a lot of work. Because you basically were committing to this project. What made you decide to do it?
Um, It was fun. So one thing I love the ghostwriting a lot, but again, I'm writing other people's stories. And I was talking to a friend of mine, a very, very talented editor, and he knew how fast I wrote. So like a lot of time when you're ghostwriting, you have a very strict deadline. You have to get work in, every couple weeks. It's very stringent. And I wasn't doing a lot of my own writing. So my friend and I were talking about AI because it's something that's in everyone's sort of any creative person is worried about it because it's sort of creeping into the creative sphere. And we're talking about how much, well, we didn't like it, pretty much.
Okay.
So he was like, you know what, you're probably the only person I know who could write almost as fast as AI. And I was like, huh, you know what? Challenge accepted. So then I came up with this whole project with his help. He's actually the one who came up with the name Author versus AI for my project, which thank you, Robert, Robert Rente. And Yeah, so then I conceived of this whole project. I did about 6 months of prep, doing all my outlines and my character sketches and all that kind of stuff. And then on Global Book Day, I started writing.
I love it. Congratulations. You can definitely say you have tackled AI and won. That's awesome. I love it. So you say
Thanks.
you're now sending it out. You're sending it out to publishers. What are you doing with the process now that you have all these books done?
Yeah, definitely. I'm set. I've sent it out to some publishers. Some agents have looked at them. Some contests. I sent them out to some contests. So yeah, we'll see. One of the books made the long list for a contest, which I'm quite excited by. So I think I'm on the right track with them.
We are excited for you. Awesome. So, Madame, you gave us a little insight of what advice you would give new authors. What else would you tell them if you had to give an up and coming author or already an author who needs a little bit motivation? What would you tell them?
I would tell them just keep writing. I truly believe that everyone out there has a story to tell and a unique voice. And a lot of people are, cautious because one thing that we talked about was AI. AI can make people think, oh, why should I write a book? AI could just do it for me. Why should I be the one to do this? Because you have your unique voice, and you don't have to write a book in a week like I did, but sit down, start writing, find out what you have to say, what you have to tell the world, and you might find out a few things about yourself along the way.
That's an awesome advice. I think sometimes authors or aspiring authors forget that this is a really powerful, magical moment that you should enjoy. So I love it. So, Miss Allison, where can our viewers, where can our listeners find you? Can you tell us where they can learn more about you? I know you have a website. What is it? Tell us.
Sure. It's just my name, AlisonMcBain.com. That's Allison with one L. And that connects to all my socials, my email address if you want to reach out, have a question. And yeah, lots of ways to get a hold of me.
I had to double check your spelling. I was like, Allison, oh, wait, one L. So I'm glad you mentioned it because, yes, I had to double check it as well. So I loved it. So, Madame, before you leave us, are you ready for the lightning round?
I am.
All right.
Should be fun.
Super easy, so don't think too much into this. Let's do this. Coffee or tea?
Oh, I love coffee. I can't drink it anymore, so I'm going to have to go with tea.
Okay, I like. A wizard or a pirate?
Oh, definitely a wizard. You got to have the magic in your life.
I go back and forth. Every once in a while, I just want to be a pirate. I'm like, I think they have more fun. City or country?
I love cities, but I think I'm at the stage of my life. I like the country. I like it quiet so I can write.
You have transition. I'm like, I can do away with a party life. I like it. Scary movies or comedy?
Oh, definitely comedy. I close my eyes. I hate jump scares.
All right, here's a little different. Let's see how you do. If you could be any Disney villain, who would you pick?
Hmm. I think I would have to go with Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty because she was actually awesome. She had powerful magic. She could shapeshift into a dragon. She had tons of minions and a cool old castle. Sign me up.
She's a very popular one with that question, so I will have to agree. I
Oh, yeah.
love it. Miss Allison, it has been a pleasure having you. Thank you and congratulations on the book. Do you have any closing remarks for us?
Just to say thank you so much for having me on. I had a lovely time chatting with you. Thank you.
It has been truly a pleasure. Congratulations to our viewers. Go ahead, check out the website. It is in the comments. Make sure you follow the amazing Miss Allison. It is always so much fun to have you guys on the show with us. We'll be back today with 2 more, by the way, so make sure you guys are joining us. Authors that we're going to be discussing their books as well, so we're hoping you stay tuned to us. And thank you so much for everybody. And if you have not signed up, make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. And we'll see you back in about 30 minutes. Bye, everyone.